Now by Peter Bechtold. He's the former director of Near East and North Africa Studies at the Foreign Service Institute at the State Department. He's joining us from Portland. Normally, leaders huddle for a considerable amount of time, then emerge for a news conference. Today was different. What do you read into that?
Well, I'm not sure I understood your question. Can you repeat it, please?
Well, normally the leaders get together, have a big meeting, and then they come out and brief the press. This was a news conference right off the bat. Yeah, what do you make of that?
Yeah, that was very, very strange because normally they have a photo op and then they go to the Oval Office, talk, maybe have lunch together, and then after they are done, the two working parties come up with a communique, and then you have the press conference. And this seemed like they had agreed in advance what they were going to do and going to talk about. And my only guess is that since President Trump said about a week ago that the Middle East portfolio would be handled by his son-in-law, Mr. Kushner, who he said if he cannot solve it, nobody can. And Mr. Kushner has close ties to Mr. Netanyahu. Perhaps they agreed in advance. And so they thought, we can go straight to the press conference. It's very odd.
Yeah.
It's very odd.
Peter, Trump is promising to deliver a great peace deal, saying he's starting early where other administrations did not. But his predecessor, Barack Obama, started in January of 2009, naming former Senate Majority Leader George Mitchell to be a special envoy. We know what happened there, and every president since Jimmy Carter has thought that they could get a deal done. Is President Trump naive?
Well, you know, the question with him is always which President Trump are we talking about? The candidate who is continuing talking and acting as if he were still a candidate, or the now president who is in charge of U.S. foreign policy? Perhaps he is learning about how complex various situations are. But as you said, the two-state solution has been U.S. policy since 1947. And every single administration has endorsed it. And Jerusalem was to be a corpus separatum, to be negotiated among the parties. And a one-state solution is one option, but it means that Israel will cease being a democracy when they have a majority of Palestinians under their control, which is going to be very, very soon.
So what did you make of his comments on the two-state solution and also on the settlements?
Well, you know, in principle, they can say one-state or two-state solution because back about a dozen years ago, I talked with individuals who were at Camp David and at many of the previous negotiations, and they said the continuing building of settlements means that the two-state solution is no longer viable, and that de facto it is turning into a one-state solution. That, of course, means a large number of Palestinians in the West Bank, or Judea-Samaria, as the Israelis call it, plus East Jerusalem is going to mean that demographic balance is going to turn against Israel, because many Israelis, especially those coming from Eastern Europe, are elderly and they tend not to have children.
Let me ask you one final question before we let you go. The former U.S. ambassador to Israel, Daniel Shapiro, said this is an absolutely crazy time for this meeting. He talked about precious planning hours by the Israelis with Flynn out the window. He described the White House as in utter turmoil. He wrote in a tweet, Flynn gone, vicious staff infighting, more heads likely to roll. He says there's important business to get done, but who in the White House can focus on it with the fires burning? Is he right about that?
Well, it seems so, you know. I mean, Mr. Shapiro was certainly close to the Israelis and also close to the Obama administration, and so have his predecessors who have been deep experts on Israel and quite knowledgeable about the Arab side of the equation. And when you rush into something as complex as the Arab-Israeli conflict, without apparently being familiar with the background, if I may just point out to you, as you probably know, there have been two Arab peace plans offered, one in the 1980s and another one in the previous decade, where all Arab states agreed to have peace with Israel as long as Israel withdraws to the borders prior to the 1967 war. And that is an Arab offer. And now to say, as the president seemed to this morning, that he's got some new partners, it's going to be a better deal, it strikes me that maybe he hasn't read his briefing papers, or maybe they were not prepared for him.
Peter Bechtold joining us from Portland, Oregon. Thanks so much for your analysis.